What's going on, Broncos country? My name is Kev Dan, and you are listening in to another episode of Bourbon, Broncos, and No BS. We got Jared here, we got Spotty and Dave here. We also got a really awesome special guest who will join us here in a few minutes. I'm going to leave that to you guys to wait around, stick around, and see who it is, so you guys can ask him plenty of questions. But guys, obviously, really rough week last week against Detroit. We'll talk about that for the first half of the show. And then we'll start looking at the upcoming game on Christmas Eve against the New England Patriots, whose record may not reflect the actual quality of their team. So we'll see. But stick around. Our guest just joined us. We'll bring him on after the intro. Here you go, guys. Orange Weekly, fans, brews, and Broncos news. Well, guys, I love that the four of us are here, but we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jeff Legwold. How are you doing?
How we doing, fellas?
Great, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
All good. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to have you on, man. We're going to have a ton of questions for you. Looking forward to hearing your insight as to what's going on in Broncos country and, amongst the players, the coaches, everything you're hearing. You always have some great insight.
I'll try not to bring the BS because I know the rules.
Absolutely.
One rule.
Jeff's
one rule.
A longtime veteran of the show. Jeff knows the rules. I love it.
Yeah, he's been here before.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh.
Well,
you
Jeff,
guys have me back. So I guess that's it.
Anytime, man. Well, hey, let's start with this. Look, Broncos obviously lost a big one last week in a big fashion. So, if you don't mind, take us back to kind of like what was the feeling after the game? What was, kind of going on amongst the players, things that, maybe we might not have seen in just the main stories or anything like that, things that kind of stuck out to you.
Well, Kevin, I think a lot of it is, and schematically, that's the closest team to the Dolphins that they've played since week 3 in terms of offensively, pre-snap motion and all of those things. And they had some of I think they were a very tired team. And I think they knew it before they went. Sean Payton talked a lot last week to us about being worried about how much they were on the practice field and trying to regulate what they were doing. You had 3 road games in 13 days. And, through the years, the NFL doesn't give teams 3 consecutive road games very often. And rarely does any team get through all 3 of those 3-0. It just doesn't happen. And so they had sort of pushed the limit anyway. And history tells us you're going to lose one of those, and it may look bad. And it was just the worst. Had they played another team or another, type of offense, maybe they could have slugged it out and sort of slowed the game down a little bit. But when they had the 3 and outs in the first half, I think offensively they had to leave what would have worked, which was possessing the ball, limiting snaps, all of those things. So it was like a perfect storm of bad things, and they missed a ton of tackles, and they hadn't done that for 2 months. So again, that's a sign of a tired team. And I know they travel like the rest of us don't, and all of those things, but it still is a sort of a grueling way to make a living. And that, that was a tired team, and Detroit was not, and that you saw the result.
It's fair.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit that point, Jeff, that you said, because I think it's huge to mention. We had to throw away our offensive playbook real quick, and a lot of people were real mad at Sean Payton for, like, everyone's like, oh, his play calling was weird, it was different. It's like we were down by 2 scores real quick in that game, and at some point, basically at half, it was 21-0 at half,
right?
And
their first half possessions, I think, were 4 punts, a fumble, and then the kneel down just to end the half. So that you're not getting, and three of those punt possessions were 3 and outs. So, you've had a possessions that were a minute 40 or two. You're not giving your defense any time at all to recalibrate. So.
And it's frustrating because on that first drive, it looked like, the first strike to Jerry Jeudy up the middle, great play all the way down, and then just one small mistake, and we just never got the rhythm back once that happened.
Yeah, they had 36 yards in the first half after that play. It just was, it was just like, good night, everybody.
Yeah.
And Dan Campbell said after the game, I actually put it in a story, but Dan Campbell said after the game, the pressure look that they gave on the fumble play, they had not run all season. So the Broncos got an unscouted look and a free runner. Lions got a free runner to the quarterback well off the ball. You're talking a DB that was 6 yards off the ball when the snap went. So again, just a tough combination, and they didn't fare well.
Yeah,
for sure.
No.
I know you mentioned that we had the 3 road games too, and I feel like Detroit was a little extra motivated as well. They're coming off, I believe, 3 losses up to that point. So, they're seeing their playoff hopes, or at least the division, start to diminish a little bit if they lose that game. So they're probably running a lot more, and they're scheming for our offense very well to make sure that they don't drop that 4th game.
Yeah, and I would say what you're saying is exactly right. And I charted the 3 previous games before last week, and they had not been that aggressive in the pass rush in any of those games. So they had obviously decided it was the time of the season when they were going to roll the dice and take some risks. And the 2 biggest quarterback hits of the game were by defensive backs off the ball. So they obviously had made a decision to bring guys from deep in the formation. And sometimes, if a team hasn't shown that, that's a tough one for even the best offensive lines to sort of gather in real time and make the pass off the way they need. And both times they did it, they got an absolute free runner. The second one, it was an incompletion, but it was probably the biggest hit on Wilson in the game. He was lined up in man coverage across from Mims out wide, and he just sprinted to the quarterback from there. So you don't see that sort of corner, the cat blitz as they call it, way back. But you don't see that very often anymore because it's such a long way. But it was from the blind side. So
Now, there's really been a growing feeling of resiliency coming from these players. They feel like they've been exuding a lot more confidence outwardly, and a feeling of, this team has believed in itself the whole time, and you guys are just kind of catching up. Do you think that feeling is still there after a loss like this, or do they take a little bit of a hit in that department?
Well, I think the fact it's an NFC game, in the big picture, yes, it looked ugly, and you don't want it to carry over for sure. But in the big picture, the only real dent in sort of the season was, okay, you're probably not going to win the division, and that was probably a pipe dream or a slim chance anyway.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
So, but, you just needed all the wins if you were going to have a chance for the division. They have 3 AFC games left. They got to win all 3, and then you take your chances to see if you get enough help to get in. But it was not an AFC game. So the players know this. The coaches know this. They all do the math. So the fact it was not an AFC game, I think, limits sort of the hangover. They're like, and they got a little day off. He gave them almost sort of a mini bye week of rest here.
Okay.
They won't be back on the practice field until tomorrow. So he gave them, he knew he had a tired team, and he made the decision rather than one extra walkthrough, yesterday. Because the rule is the players have to have 1 day off every 7. So he could not have worked them all this week, even if he wanted to. Sure. But instead of having like a mini walkthrough Monday, he just told them, get some rest, stay off your feet, and they'll get back at it on Wednesday.
Yeah, spend some time with the family after a long road stretch. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you don't mind, like what is maybe one thing that the Broncos are looking at really focusing on from this last week moving to this next week, other than just tired, recuperating, getting some strength back, what kind of other things might they be looking at it really focusing in on?
Well, Kevin, I think the one thing they know is despite all the Patriots' troubles, Belichick's card, his ID card in 50 years of defense in the NFL is taking away your favorite thing. So they know if they want to get the ball to Cortland Sutton this week, they're going to need a plan to do it. Could be a lot of rubs and picks and, bunches, putting them in the bunch formation so you can keep the jam away from them. Right. But they know that's one thing Belichick will always do. And he's made a career out of it, and he has plenty of jewelry in his dresser because of it. So that's the one thing they know. Sure. They know they need the other receivers. You're going to have to bring a little more in this one. And if they want to get the ball to Cortland, they're going to need a pretty good plan to do it.
Well, and to follow up on something you said about the Lions in this last game, you said that they had really kind of brought some stuff that they hadn't shown all year against the Broncos. Do you get the sense that Denver has any of that kind of same stuff that they've been holding back in their playbook? Or do you think that you've kind of seen this team figure out what it's doing well already and kind of want to emphasize that going down the stretch?
Well, Vance Joseph's been, he's really – it's historical what he's done. I mean, no team since World War II has even given up 70 in a game, and no team ever has done it and won more than one game in that season. So what they've done is unprecedented to bounce back from that. And they had a 7-week stretch there where they were the number 1 or the number 2 scoring defense in the league, and it's the same players. So somebody's coaching. So I think Vance really. He got more aggressive, and they made some lineup tweaks. And to your question, I think because they've needed every win, they've played with their cards on the table all year. They've had to. They couldn't leave anything back. I mean, they needed every play, every win, every third down that they could put together.
Makes sense.
Now, Jeff, I'm really glad you brought up the game that shall not be mentioned, because Jared loves talking about that game. I mean, every day it's Miami. Anyway, one thing. So Jared, actually, you got a question first. I'll pass.
Yeah, I just real quick. I know we're going to talk about it in the second half of the show, but with K-Jack coming back in this game, PJ Locke having kind of a rough game. I think he got a couple blown coverages, but missed tackles. Like we talked about, it was hard. Weirdly, for the past 7 games, we've been pretty good at it. But how much of an impact do you think he's going to have on this defense going into New England coming here?
Well, just his brain is, unbelievable. Like he's one of the smartest players I've ever been around in all my years of doing this. And I think ultimately they will kind of have a mix and match approach. I think Locke has played well enough to deserve and get snaps, and they will also respect the fact that what Kareem can bring, especially on early downs. I would think when they're in that big nickel and they think they're in a run situation, that Kareem would appear there in some of those things. So I think they will be more willing to make switches, alongside Simmons based on what they expect or what they're getting. So I think both guys will play some. How much, it's just a matter of how much they're in the big nickel, the regular nickel, the dime, all of that stuff moving forward. But I think everybody's going to play because they know they need everybody to get it done.
Yeah.
I was going to say that if Kareem would have been back, I feel like that 3rd and 10 run play that got them a first down would not have happened. I'm still mad about that. Of all the plays in the whole game, I'm still mad that they ran the ball on 3rd and 10, still got a first down. I can't believe it.
Well, that's what I mean. When you get those pre-snap teams, if they crease you, they're I think the underrated. People always so well. Yeah, and people always think defending the pass is more sort of risky, when in reality, run defense is one guy, one gap. So if one player makes a mistake, it's going big, and that's just a fact. And that's why when teams do get a run game going, it tends to pile on because you only need one mistake. Whereas in the passing game, maybe the quarterback's a little off or the corner sees it because he's moving forward. You know, there's a lot of things that happened in coverage that where a guy can make up for something else that happens. But if you have a certain gap, you can't leave to go help somebody in trouble. And that's why run defense always looks like that. You know, there's really no middle ground. You know, there's not okay run defense. There's really good. And there's like, holy crap, are they ever going to stop running? And, you know, there's just those two levels.
Unfortunately, we're on that.
And I think we made
side of bad run defense right now. So,
yeah.
Well, they've had to commit so much. You know, they're a little undersized up front, and that's what happens. Is you've got to commit your linebackers a little closer to the action than you might want to. And so instead of reading and filling, they're almost in the gap already when the play starts. But, you know, you got to make choices because, you know, it's not like you can just dial, 1-800 D tackle and then, get another guy.
Yeah, and I think maybe we at Orange Weekly at least underestimated the return of Frank Ragnow to that Detroit offensive line last week.
He's awfully good. Yeah, you're right. That's
so
exactly
good.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was a difference when he wasn't in there.
Absolutely.
It'd be like the Eagles playing without Kelsey. It's just
right.
Things are not going to look the same.
Yeah. Yeah, the Bears kind of whooped him in week 14. So, yeah, having him back was so important for them.
You know, Jeff, you mentioned that, and this is kind of back to looking at the Patriots here, that Bill Belichick, I was mentioning even right before the show started, the boys, that he always does something to take away what you do best. And we kind of know that now these teams that we're going to play the last 3 games are probably going to be looking at take away the run game and take away Cortland Sutton. So it's probably going to be big for us to see maybe Judy and possibly Marvin a little more. So my real question to you is there a real reason that we haven't seen much of Marvin in this offense, considering of how high of a pick that he is for us?
He's been explosive and really has impact when he plays. But, I personally have asked Sean Payton that a lot, through the season, and others have as well. But I think because this is sort of a transition year for the Payton and his staff with the roster, they've made a lot of decisions based on pass protection. Like in certain downs, Jaleel McLaughlin just isn't going to play because they want Pirine in there for certain pass protection looks. And at receiver, when they go to that condensed formation and sort of squish everybody in, they like Humphrey as that crackback blocker or the edge guy blocker. And so a lot of those snaps where Marvin could be the third receiver in the bunch, he's losing those snaps because they want Humphrey on the field on the edge. It has nothing to do with receiving or catching the ball. It has to do with dispersing protection a little bit. And then in the run game, they like Humphrey as a blocker too. So they're making decisions for things other than catching the ball because that's where they're at right now, the first year of the group together. But they know, and I think they wake up every day knowing that they have to figure out the balance because Mims needs the ball because he is, they're not the speediest team overall right now, but he is the explosive speed that they have at wideout.
For sure.
I have a follow-on kind of player question on that aspect too. What you've been around the players, you've been around the coaches a lot. The resurgence of Lloyd Cushenberry from last year has been amazing. He's been doing so much better this year. What can that be attributed to the new coaching staff, or just he's kind of figuring it out now in his second year?
Well, you never want to cheapen the work the player has done himself, and I wouldn't. He has put in the time, and he's really smart. That's a smart guy, and I just think they have a more sort of cohesive plan for each situation up front than they did last year. They coach it better. It makes more sense. Everybody knows their responsibilities. If you've seen, they've sort of kept their gap. The splits have been much better this year. Last year, you'd look at it and two of the players would be in one split, the other half of the line would be in another, and you'd sort of be wondering why that is. And it's just not supposed to look that way. So they are getting coached better, and the whole plan makes more sense. But I wouldn't cheapen the amount of work, Lloyd has done either to really, because he was always a really smart player. Every team that I talked to before that draft liked him as one of the best centers on the board, because when they tested him in all the team visits, there was never a time they really stumped him with anything on the board or anything in the video.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's just not the most powerful guy, so he has to get it right every time. He's quick-footed and he's quick out of his stance, but he's not necessarily a mauler. So he knows he has to get his hands right and everything. And when he does, he's really good.
Now, I'm going to ask you for a little insight about the Russ-Peyton relationship. And I want to preface this by saying I want to throw out the video of the getting into it on the sideline versus Detroit. Guys, come on. This is an offensive coach and a quarterback. They get into it probably once a week, and we just don't see it.
I call it Wednesday.
Right. Yeah. So throw that out the window for a second. But I have been kind of curious just watching the team all year.
He's probably yelled at me more than that, really, honestly.
Fair enough. But, just week to week, it felt like sometimes you see Russ really trying to play within a Peyton offense and do what his coach wants to, and with more success than other times. So just what has your sense been throughout the season of how these two individuals meld what they do best and how that has been coming out on the field?
Yeah, I think, and people can believe me or not, and I understand that, but I think people underestimate that how much Russ does not mind being coached hard. He's a grown up. He's been in the league a long time. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He'll be coached hard. He's fine. It does not bother him. And I think more is made. I think because so much is out. When I first started covering the league, there's no internet, so nobody's playing highlights on social media. And after every snap, and you used to see. I've seen coaches throw the water jug at people, and all that stuff used to happen. More. Before everybody knew they were on camera all the time. But I don't think the blow up as much. I never do. But, I would usually say you'd be more concerned if there wasn't any kind of interaction like that. But usually what happens, I will tell you, in the dynamics of it, the quarterback's coach is always sort of the bodyguard for the quarterback. So you'll always see the quarterback coach kind of hovering around just to make sure everything's okay. And, that's the sort of the conduit between the quarterback and the head coach, especially when the head coach is the play caller. So,
and he was standing right there too.
No, he always, that's how it works. I mean, he is, think of him as the Secret Service for the quarterback. He's monitoring the situation, and he will jump in front of anything that needs to be deflected. So, but and I by all accounts, and I've talked to everybody involved, he coaches everybody hard, and they accept that. I think they have a lot less problem with it than maybe the public at large. The only danger for the head coach is when you push them that hard, if you don't ever give them the other side of the coin and tell them when something's good. And that's not something I've heard, but he told them their first team meeting way back in, April, it's over. You're going to get coached hard because that's the way Sean Payton said, that's the way I learned it, and that's the way I do it. And so football players know the locker room. They know, as long as you don't single somebody out insulting in a meeting, if it's just, you got to be better at this and you can't make this mistake, they're fine with that.
Well, I think the one thing that social media is missing on that whole interaction is that they weren't blowing up on each other.
Oh, no.
It was really the coach blowing up on Russ,
Oh,
or Sean blowing up on Russ, and Russ was like, "Yep, I understand.
Well,
Sounds good."
they both were so mad at the penalty because
Sure.
rarely is
Well, that whole
it ever called.
all three of those.
Oh yeah, no, it was the sequence of doom. I think in retrospect, if he had it to do over again, I think he likely would have challenged the second play, just because he said he had a good angle on the first one, and that's why he didn't challenge that one. But the second one, I think in retrospect, somebody in the booth should have just said, "Throw the flag, no matter what. You might get lucky."
Right.
I don't know if they would have gotten the replay look for the ones I've seen that would have ultimately switched the call, but I think the red flag there would have been an okay risk.
For sure. I think that was probably the biggest question just on that was, when you're a team that's as desperate as they were in terms of being down by that many points, like what do you have to lose at that point by throwing the red flag?
I'm not sure I kicked the field goal. I think I'm thrown to the end zone.
Yeah.
It's a 3-score game before you kick, and it's a 3-score game after you kick. So, but I got, again, if there's just something to getting something.
Yeah.
You've had 3 quarters of misery.
Futility, yeah. Yeah.
It's not, the NFL is a nutty place. It's almost doesn't matter how good your season is. You're going to get,
It's going to happen.
You're going to get blasted some night. It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
Coaching's too good. There's too much detail. There's too much analytics, too much video. I mean, the amount of information they have on what you're doing is going to set you up. And, there's probably, we all don't like to admit it, but there's probably in every game 5 plays that tip it.
Yeah. Yeah, fair
you're
enough.
Just trying to hold your ground until the 5 plays arrive.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and to mention it, you're processing all that in real time, and you're trying to, especially with like changing up the offensive scheme and what we're doing and where we're going, looking at film after every play, and all that is.
I can't even remember when the recycling goes out, so I don't know.
But to this coaching staff's credit, the way this team handles those situations, when they come up on one of those 5 plays, just last year it felt like they had so few answers at any point, and you just see them this year go out and maybe it's the wrong answer, but they've got an answer and they'll execute it sometimes and make it look good to the point where you're like, this team has direction again, and that's really encouraging.
Well, and I will tell you, this is just a tougher, more physical team. We don't know what's going to happen to the Lions yet, but for the Lions, their last 7 opponents were 2-5 the next week.
Oof, yeah.
So that's a sign of a team that plays physically tough. I mean, you're leaving a mark, essentially. I mean, that's pretty substantial for teams to be 2-5 the week after they play the Broncos. So, if the Lions don't get it done, it'll be 2-6. So that's a sign you're doing something okay.
Yeah, very much for sure.
Especially this time of year. This isn't, we all want to be pretty, but this is not a pretty time of year anymore. This is slug it out and see what you get. And even the high fly, the Dolphins are going to need something. A team like that, if they just pedal to the metal all year, they're going to need to get I always feel like when San Francisco has to turn on the bully button, they can do it.
Yeah,
they dial it up and they just bludgeon you. The Eagles can bludgeon you. The Ravens can bludgeon you. Those are the teams you look for in no matter how amazing the spirals look in November. That you want to look at the teams that can hit the anvil, as it were, when it's time for January.
Absolutely.
For sure. So I know we're coming up on time for you to get out of here, Jeff. So first off, definitely appreciate you joining us again.
Fellas, you guys are great. It's great. I appreciate you having me. And
I did want to leave you with a two-parter question.
Rock me. Two-parter. You're always rough.
I'm
right. He's been holding them off. He's been writing them in his little notebook in the side.
Yeah.
Well, after we started 1-5. So after we started 1-5, would you have thought that we would be in this position now where we're looking for a playoff spot And then also, do you think that we have, in your opinion, a good shot to at least win the next 3 games to potentially get that wild card slot?
Well, they're good enough to win it. I mean, it's just you can't, you got to avoid the big turnover day. That's, you got to play clean the rest of the way. You got to get all 3, and they're still going to need a little help. But I think if you're the Broncos, your goal is to put the pressure on other people, and you do that by winning. And I mean, you look at what they've got left. You got a Patriots team struggling, and then you got back-to-back teams with interim coaches and backup quarterbacks. So if you can't win those 3, you're probably not ready to make the playoffs anyway.
Fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's what I would say.
Yeah,
I love it. Well, seriously, Jeff, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you on, man. Great insight as always. Good conversation, man. So thank you very much.
I appreciate you, Kevin. Hey, you guys, thanks a lot. Have a good holiday.
You too. Thanks so much,
man.
Jeff.
Take care.
See ya.
Okay, guys. So, looking at where we're at now, here we are. Detroit game happened. John and I talked about that at length. If you guys want to go back and listen to the post-game podcast for everybody listening, but let's get just really quickly kind of your takes on briefly what happened, what you saw, what stood out to you in that game, and kind of what you're taking moving forward. So, I mean, Jared, we can start with you, man.
Jeff stole a little bit of my excitement here. So we were going to talk about, like, everyone's trying to blame Sean Payton. It's kind of the reason I asked in the post-game podcast. I jumped on and asked the question if we were to blame anybody, because it seems like a lot of Broncos country is trying to blame Sean Payton. That was just one of those rough games that basically after the fumble, which is the first drive that we had, our offense got absolutely nothing going. There was something that happened mentally to that offense that just couldn't get it going. After having a great drive down the field and then to turn it over and fumble. Now we got the punt, but our offense never got going again. So the only thing that frustrates me in the bigger picture, and this is the one big picture thing that I'm thinking about, is we no longer really control our own destiny because everything went the opposite way for us.
Everything.
It was basically like everything that we needed to happen didn't happen. So we no longer control our own destiny. Even if we do win these next 3 games, we're going to need a little help across the league. So that's the one frustrating part, I think. But overall, that was a playoff team. Absolutely. That was a playoff team that's going to be in the playoffs. They're going to have a medium, probably win their division, have a decent seed in the NFC. And we saw what happens when we play a decent team that's probably a playoff-ready team. Jeff said it. It's an NFC team, so we're not super worried about it overall. But in general, we really need to start winning these games, and it starts next week.
No, David, go for it.
So I didn't watch the game. I was not available. I had pre-existing.
Lucky you.
I know, right? So the NFL flexed this after I made plans that were non-refundable. So shout out to the schedule makers. Anyway, when I checked in and I saw the score was 0-0 in the early second quarter, I was like, "Oh no, this isn't great." And because that told me that the defense had held up its end of the bargain, but man, you're holding back the Detroit Lions at home in your 3rd road game out of 3, like Jeff said, 3rd and 13 days, and you are just and your offense is giving you nothing. Your offense can't give you a touchdown, a field goal, nothing to back up this effort. And it's like there's no way to keep that from going the same way. And just like that, it was 21-0 going into the half, and that's your ball game, right?
Yeah.
So, it's another kind of one of those games where, like we said, the points don't carry over into next week. So that's, you really just kind of forget it and move on. And so we'll see. I think, the Patriots offer a unique challenge, but I think they offer a better matchup overall. I just, you got to put it behind you, right? You got to get it moved on and get on to the next.
For sure. Spotty, what do you think, man?
So there's a couple things I want to kind of touch on, and it kind of a couple things to even go back to what Jeff said, right? So we were talking about those 5 plays that happen in every game that can define an entire game. And honestly, for the Broncos, those 5 plays have gone our way almost every week during our streak, right? So whether it's a turnover or a fumble that we receive on the first, play or the first down. So this was kind of that moment, like, they kind of go your way all the time, right? And another thing I want to kind of mention, and that he said is like, this is the next team since, the best, or the kind of the Dolphins-esque offense. Now, if you look at that stat line in the game, that's 100% right. We got 100 yards rushing by David Montgomery, 88 yards rushing by Jahmyr Gibbs. They're averaging 6.2 to 7 yards a carry. So, honestly, at one point, it felt like every time that they handed the football to one of those guys, that they were running down the field and they were absolutely gashing us. And then, of course, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown having a fantastic game. And then, Sam Laporta bringing back old nightmares of what tight ends used to do to us week in and week out. Like 100% in my mind, I'm like, did Travis Kelce pass the torch already? Did Darren Waller gave them tips on how to beat us? So I give it, in this one, I'm gonna give it to the Detroit Lions. Okay. They came in the game, and I mean, all the floating talking heads were saying the Lions are going to look to take away what the Broncos do best. And what the Broncos do best and what they have been doing best over the streak is running the football. And we got 20 carries plus by Pookie, and the guy's got no yards.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And Samaje Perine was our number one rusher, and it still wasn't a whole lot. And so if we're not eating away the clock on the offense, then our defense is spending more and more time on the field. And yes, we want our defense to be on there, but they're gassed. They're 3 road games. We're not getting any turnovers. We really weren't getting any pressure on Goff at all either. And that's a recipe for disaster. That man was sitting back there picking us through the air. So I think for me, we were talking about all those other losses, like the loss to the Texans. I would almost not even call it loss, because it was the last play of the game, and we were in it the whole entire time. And we came out the next week and we were very, very strong to prove it. This next game against the Patriots is going to tell us if we want to play in the playoffs. After you get your butt handed to you by a team that could be considered superior, any given week, and they destroy you, do you have the confidence to come in the next week to not play down to the level of the team that you're playing, but to take the game? This is that game for us where we're going to say, okay, the Broncos are here and they want to play for it.
Yeah.
It's funny, Spotty. We're talking about it. A lot of this was discussed. All the worst case scenarios that we discussed in the pregame podcast came to life, and it was 100%.
Same time. Yeah.
At the same time, we were talking about how Vance Joseph came out and said this is a fast team. Last fast team we saw was Miami. He came out saying, like, we were worried about Sam Laporta, and flashbacks from the tight end. We talked about that. Like, all the things that we said, like, we need to stop, we just didn't. And it did. That's exactly what happened in that game.
Yeah,
for sure. A couple comments here. So Keith, refs did screw us over. I would argue against that, only because it's not like it was the last play of the game or last drive of the game on the goal line that would have set us up for the win, right? The refs didn't allow 42 points to get put up against us, right? That was us. We lost the game. Yeah, that whole sequence of events was sketchy, and John and I broke it down pretty at length, in the post-game podcast, if you guys want to go back and listen to that. But yeah, it's never good to start with a fumble. It's always nice to be on the receiving side of that, like when we get the fumble or interception right to start the game, but it's not as fun on the other side, guys. It's just And then here with Steve, thanks for joining, Steve and Keith. So look, what I'm hoping after seeing this weekend, where everything went against the Broncos, everything, I'm hoping that we just got all the bad juju out of the way. Okay. And now it's just going to be smooth sailing from here on out. We're going to get a ton of help. We're going to win out, and then we are going to get in the playoffs. Right. So that's what I'm hoping for anyway. But looking at this, it does start with this game against the Patriots. Right. So let's start breaking this down. And one of the big things that, Spotty, you said before the show, and then I don't know if you and Leggy were talking beforehand.
They were texting about this.
He said exactly what you were saying, in that Bill Belichick loves to and will do everything he can to take away your strengths. So Cortland Sutton and I think our run game, right? Which is essentially what happened in Detroit there. So question for you guys, and again, Jared, start with you. Kind of what do you see? What are your worries or concerns, and what are you looking to see from the Broncos in general to kind of put us in a good spot for this game?
So I'm obviously not in Sean Payton's head, but in general, if I'm looking back on that as an offensive coordinator, I'm wishing we got the quick strike stuff going and practice the quick strike stuff a little bit more. All they did all game was send the blitz. Blitz identification and quick game can save us out of that. And that's talking about the Patriots. The Patriots did that for 7 years, 8 years, and won a couple Super Bowls with that exact same thought process. I identify the blitz and figure out where the quick game is to be able to get the ball out of his hands. That's really what, if I'm the Broncos right now, that's what I'm looking at. That first strike to Judy out of the slot on the slant got us 40 yards, and we never went back to that. We never hit the slant or the inside guy in the middle ever again, even though they were sending the massive amounts of blitzes they were. And Jeff was talking about, they're sending blitzes from like six guys deep. But again, you have to make that adjustment in game because it's not something that they were planning for. So if Belichick is trying to plan the same thing, we have to start dialing up the quick game. And if we don't get the quick game going over the middle, not just on the outsides, because our outside quick game, we got that. We need to get that middle quick game going. And if we don't, it's going to be another long game, a really low scoring game, unfortunately.
Yeah. David, the only thing I'll add to you, David, because you were talking about it earlier on as well. How or maybe it was Spotty, but one of you guys were just talking about how the Patriots were really kind of sticking it to the Chiefs the first half of their game last week. So, how do you feel that's going to play into this as well?
Well, what Jared just said terrifies me because a quick game over the middle is like Russ's least favorite thing. That's the thing he does the worst and doesn't like to do the most. And I am really, really hopeful that you are wrong about that being a big key to the game, Jared, because I don't think it's going to come together this week, pal. Like, if it would have been.
I'm just saying that would have been the only thing that would have saved us in the second half. But once they identified that they're just sending the middle, why they're vacating the middle, and going back to it, Bill Belichick's going to know that he hates doing that. He's going to know that he hates going over the middle. So they're going to vacate the middle, throw over the middle on me. You're not going to do it.
Yeah, you won't. He won't.
You won't.
He won't. Maybe he will. I feel like if we haven't seen it by week 16, we're not gonna see it in large measure this week, and so that's got me a little bit nervous. I am hoping that they can find something else to open up in the passing game against New England that doesn't rhyme with Cortland Button, because I think you guys, Spotty and Leggy, you were totally right. They're gonna do everything they can to take away Sutton. And you are going to have to dial up Judy and Mims or Brandon Johnson or something in this passing game.
Humphreys. Let's go.
Bill Jordan Humphrey. And man, I wanted to bring this up with Leggy, and it felt like it was just not the time. You guys remember when they wanted to sign Alan Lazard in free agency? That was like a big thing, and they lost out to him with the Jet. This is why. They wanted him to do what they have Lil Jordan Humphrey doing as far as cracking on blocks in the run game, being that kind of receiver. That's what he does really, really well. And that's why they wanted him for this offense. We're lost in the weeds. Spotty, what are your thoughts, feelings? New England, I'm scared.
I'm scared.
Here's something else that's not going to help your feelings, right? So the New England Patriots have lost 3 games in which they've held teams under 10 points. Again, the New England Patriots have lost 3 games where they held their opponent under 10 points. That is a ridiculous figure. The fact that you hold a team under 10 points and if you're going to lose those games, I believe it was the Chargers 6-0. They lost one game like 3-0. We all know these are kind of ugly things. That means that they have the capabilities to stick with these teams. Now, this was a Chargers team before they were truly, they still had Keenan Allen healthy, Austin Eckler back there, running like that. It was terrible weather conditions. I get it. So Bill Belichick, even with, who's the top defensive player on the Patriots right now? I'm not even sure if I can name too many of those guys. So
Belichick is the top. Like that's, yeah. He's the best thing the defense has.
it's very much him doing a whole lot with little, which might be the story of that man's career, doing a whole lot with the little. You know, the old memes back in the day where, you know, Belichick pulls a wide receiver from the grocery store checkout line. So this is what I'm seeing. I love the fact that in this game it was Jerry Jeudy that was doing the most for us, because it's going to be a similar situation against the Patriots in the fact that Bill's going to try to take away Cortland, and Bill wants to take away the run game from us. Okay. Now, the Chiefs and the Chargers don't run the football well, and the Broncos might be one of the best rushing, you know, offensive lines in the league. So that's something that's going to do us well. But we also need to know that we need to not get away from it. Our defense may keep us in this game where we can continue to just grind on the ground until we get to where we need to go. But again, Jerry Jeudy is probably going to end up with the most receiving yards again for us. But we need him not. We need Jerry Jeudy that was in Detroit, not Jerry Jeudy that was complaining against the Chargers.
Right.
Yeah. This is
So two pieces on that. So they have been over 20 points every game except for one in the first 10 games, or in the first 9 games since starting week 10. They have not let anybody score over 20 points, and some of them were 6, 7, and 0.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And the good news on the flip side of this equation is that the Patriots offense, like, think Broncos offense last year in terms of just incompetence. So, this definitely does feel like a first team to 17 wins it kind of a game. But I don't know, man. You gotta kind of stretch it a little bit to see the Broncos scoring 17 if they play the way they played on offense against Detroit.
Well, the biggest thing that I think, I do agree it's going to be a low-scoring game. Part of that, I think, is going to be because of the weather. The way the weather is looking right now is it's going to be snowing all day and during the game, which I don't think I've ever been to a snow game at all.
What?
So this is going to be incredibly fun. Yeah, I've been to plenty of games, but the weather during the winter, last couple of years has been beautiful. So it's going to be cold,
delicious.
but it's going to be awesome.
Not to take it away from you, Kev, Dan, but one of the best Broncos games of all time is Broncos versus Patriots, with the win that we had.
DJ Anderson running up the sideline. I'll never forget that.
2015
touchdown walk-off win. So
Oh, I know. I was watching that game in Japan, and they heard me in the whole building during work hours. Yeah. People came to see if I was having a heart attack because I was screaming so loud. So look, I think, if we're able to get that run game going, that's going to help a lot. I think based off the incompetence that we're seeing from the Patriots offense, you're going to see the potential for fumbles and turnovers. And I wouldn't mind a scoop and score or a pick six, and I think that's where you're going to, I would go ahead and say that we're going to get at least one touchdown off of a turnover, and I think that's going to be huge for us because it is going to be that close kind of a game where, man, there's going to be a lot of slipping, a lot of sliding. Good thing that grass is fresh there at Mile High. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for sure, and to see how these guys go out. But the way the Patriots offense runs, and the way that our defense is going to want to go out there and reprove themselves, they're refreshed, they're energized, they're ready to go. I see them bringing down the hammer on the Patriots offense, and I think that's going to be the difference maker in the game. Really, I don't see anything different from our offense in terms of production. Better than last week, but in terms of the season average, I don't think they're going to do anything spectacular that we haven't seen them do already. So
I'll tell you what, we better get the damn run game going with that weather, with those weather's conditions.
What about 2.5 yards per carry instead of 2.1? Is that okay? No.
This game is predicated on the run game. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a chance that Ramondre Stevenson is back in this game.
Of course.
And I just know from fantasy that Ezekiel Elliott did some dirty work a couple of weeks ago, which so I am most worried after watching this game, and I'm hoping that the Broncos can find themselves again. And because to be honest, even all those games that we were winning, we still weren't doing good against the run. Just most of the teams got away from the run game to start passing the ball to go against this. I mean, we still had Ty Chandler run for 100 yards against us when against the Vikings. They were averaging 5 yards a carry with the Chargers, but they had to start throwing the football. So with Romandre and Ezekiel Elliott and knowing how this game's going to go, I would say just load the box up and leave our guys on one-on-one against Juju Smith-Schuster and Demario Douglas and whoever the heck or else are their wide receivers that probably are going to be on another team next year.
It doesn't matter who's the wide receivers. Like one-on-one against anybody getting the ball from Mac Jones.
Try Bailey Zappi. Yeah, try Bailey Zappi.
Oh, they benched Mac Jones?
Oh, yeah, like 4 times. But
Mac Jones is out.
Yeah,
but now it's permanent.
No,
at least for now.
Yeah,
Bailey Zappi.
They gave him the Zach Wilson. They let him in, and then they took him out, and then they let him back in, and they took him out. And so Zach Wilson got killed, so it's a little different. But
I'm definitely gonna have to do more research on this guy before our pregame podcast. But is this the guy from Mines? This isn't the kid from Mines, is it?
No.
Who am I thinking of? Who's the kid from Mines? That's a story that was like starting.
Oh, that's no, he's in Chicago. No, he's in yeah, that's the Bears.
You're talking about Sergeant.
What's his name?
Badgett.
Yes, Tyson Badgett. Yeah.
He wasn't from Mines. He's just that was the last college game he played against.
Yeah, okay. There it is.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
God, Jared, get it together.
I'll figure it out one day.
No, you won't. But we love you anyway.
Okay.
Thanks
for you guys. I don't know if you guys have heard anything. I just checked injury reports. I don't see anything updated. So I'm not sure if Dulcich plays. No. Okay.
Now
there you go, Keith.
Anybody who's expecting anything from Greg Dulcich on the football field in a Broncos uniform is going to be sorely mistaken. You're going to need to let that go now. It's done. It's over.
Yeah. But he's the second round draft pick.
Yeah.
He was on the injury report, but it was almost like a healthy scratch kind of thing. Like he could come back, and they were just like, you know what? Stay on the bench.
So here's what had happened as far as I know. He had the hamstring injury, right? He comes off the injury report, the injured reserve. He's still got the hamstring injury, but he's practicing this week. Then he goes on the injury report with a foot injury, and then that's it for his game week. So I don't know what the deal is, but he's not going to get on the field this season. I promise you that.
He's looking like just a health issue bust kind of a player, unfortunately, and that's always sad when you see that happen because you see the talent and the potential in someone, and they just cannot stay or get healthy.
That's been the tight end position for us since Orange Julius, man. Even we took a flyer on Jake Butt, and he never got healthy.
That's the name I was trying to think of because I was like, I know there's another one like that, but Big E Bronco feeling Wilson has got to go. So question to you guys is, what is your confidence level in Russell Wilson right now?
I got it for you. He's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. Well, and it's not just because he's not going anywhere, because I don't believe that his play is what's been the issue with the Broncos offense. If they're trying to find a way to work in Marvin Mims, kind of like what Legwood was saying earlier, then this is still Russell learning this offense in the first year. Now, on the back end, we cannot get rid of him. We have way too much money into him through next year. So I'm saying, no, even if he was playing terribly right now, we're probably still looking at one more year with Russell Wilson in this offense. Now, the catcher is if he improves on the offense, let's say this is that transition year, and he improves on the offense, those open passes that the tight ends that are running up on the right-hand side, or Jerry Judy's been open, I feel like those numbers are those plays being missed are going to go down. So that is an encouragement for our offense. Now, I believe that our offense is a little outdated, of course, but that's neither here nor there. But because if we can turn it around, then we should be okay.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this in the pregame podcast. Our offense is really touchdown or check down. It's like touchdown to check down offense. He's either looking for the big play or he's checking it down. There's no in between. We're not a timing offense. It's all about vision, and Russ has got great field vision, like for the most part. But he's also sitting in a system that doesn't do over the middle. He doesn't like doing over the middle. He doesn't like the way that the system works for him. I agree with you. He's not going anywhere. However, there's things that could definitely improve, and he's someone that wants to improve. And I think Sean Payton eventually is going to figure it out. I am 100% think that Sean Payton will figure it out as we're finishing the year. We figured it out at some point. We weren't scoring more than like 20 points until week 6. I guess the Washington game, I think, is the only other game that I can think of that we scored a bunch of points. But other than that, like we really, like we're starting to turn around. We're starting to figure out what it is that's coming, and we have to be able to trust him. There's 2 things that are going to happen this offseason. One of them is I'm almost guaranteed they're going to restructure Rush's contract for next year.
Yeah.
And it's going to be restructured so we can start getting some people to help him out. And I bet you if no matter what the front office says about it, like, hey, man, we need to restructure your contract so we can get a bigger defensive lineman. Or we need to restructure contract so we can get you a better right tackle after the big trade with McGlinchey. But in general, like I feel like that's not a hard sell for this guy because he's a team player and he wants to make the team better. So it's going to be restructured. He's going to be our quarterback next year, and we're going to get the guys to be able to fit the system. We're not being patient at all. You're right. In general, we're Broncos fans. Like that's not in our vocabulary. Patience is not in our vocabulary. Like we were talking about Drew Lock throwing him to the side. I was talking crap about Noah Fant, who just had a huge game. Like I can't. I don't have the patience either. But at some point, he's had how many coaches now? 2 coaches in 2 years. 3 coaches, really, if you count the fact that we fired Hackett at this time last year. Yeah. So there's a lot of pieces to it. I don't think Russ is going anywhere, but I also don't think Russ is the problem in general. I think that we just need to rebuild a team as a whole. Like we have a lot of gaps, and it's not just the quarterback position.
Yeah, you give these guys the offseason to talk, work together, let Sean go through all of the tape and figure out things that were working, not working, how to improve. Yeah. I don't foresee any issue with, Russ restructuring his contract. John asked the questions like, well, what's the incentive for him to do that? I was like, everything you're talking about, guys. We're going to get you better players, better weapons, better protection. And that's going to lead to us potentially being Super Bowl contenders. And that's only going to help out your brand. It's going to, you're going to get to where you want to go. And it's going to help the team out. Right. And so it's not like he doesn't have enough money to begin with. I think, you turn those into incentives versus guaranteed money or whatever the case is, there's more of a drive there. But these guys, you got someone like Sean Payton. Russell Wilson has been to 2 Super Bowls, the Super Bowl winning quarterback. Like he knows what it takes to get to the top, and he knows what that looks like and feels like. Right. So it's not like we're starting with, a brand new quarterback fresh out of college, and a brand new head coach that's never been a head coach before. And we're all trying to figure it out from square one. These guys, this was a growing pain year. We're in a much better position than I think any of us thought we would be in, especially after starting 1-5, right? But regardless, to be fighting for a playoff spot with, we don't control our destiny, but still 80% chance if we win the 3 games, we don't need that much help, right? So this is a really good position for these guys to be in. And I can only imagine, the growth we're going to see from this team going into next year as well. So
here's the X factor for me. And I tried to get Leggy to go there a little bit, and credit to him, he didn't take the bait.
He's been doing this for a really long time.
A long time. President of the Pro Football Writers Association of America for a while. Can't really stump him that easily. But I was hoping to get a little bit more of an answer as far as how Peyton feels that Russ fits in with his offense, and specifically, does he feel that Russ limits what he wants to do on offense? Because we talk about it being a touchdown, a check down offense, because it is, but that's been a part of a Peyton offense. But he's had, historically, you look back at his years in New Orleans with Drew Brees, they did not neglect the middle of the field in the quick game. That was a part of their offense. That was a big part of their offense when they had Jimmy Graham, especially attacking the seam. But also on crossing routes, on timing crossing routes over the middle of the field where they were rubbing, the defender and getting a guy loose on a big gain. That's historically been a big part of the Peyton offense, and you haven't seen hardly any of it this year with Russ. Go ahead, Spotty.
Yeah.
2 comments, one to your comment, and then one to Kev's comment, okay? Transition. He did say this is a transition year, right? You just named Jimmy Graham, who is a basketball player for a tight end who runs like a wide receiver, still in the league somehow.
Yeah.
The Broncos don't have that, okay?
No.
Then we can go through with Marcus Colston, Michael Thomas. Those were the 2 players that took over almost the exact same position for each other. And what we knew with those guys is those were route running freaks. They were Cortland Sutton size, but they had Jerry Jeudy's route running, right? We don't have that again on the Broncos. Now, we're trying to develop those players, and we're trying to find them to work in the system. When you bring in somebody with a whole new offense and and you don't really have the book open up to write the checks to everybody, is hard. So I see what you're saying about those things, but he didn't have those things right away when Drew Brees came into town. Matter of fact, when he came into town, he didn't even have Drew Brees. So, and then my other thing I just want to say real quick is what Kev Dan's saying was that everybody's talking about draft picks and all that. I will make the argument there is not a single quarterback that would have been available to the Denver Broncos over the last couple of years that would have put us in a better spot than we are in right now. And right now, if we were to draft a quarterback, there's not a single quarterback in the area that we're going to be in that's going to be able to change this team in a way that's going to make us happy. So this man has already improved our team from being, 4 wins last year?
5, yeah.
Right, so we're guaranteed 3 extra wins at least on last year's season, with the hopes of the season looking even better under the same offensive coordinator and the same defensive coordinator and with the same players next year. So I want to complain about Russell. I haven't put on the jersey in the last couple of weeks, but I still don't feel like he's really that the issue.
Yeah, Spotty. Well said, man. Beautiful. Love it.
We're clipping that part. We're clipping that whole for
that one.
That's it. That's the clip. Let's go.
I've been on
That'll be there tomorrow.
I'm sorry, man. I feel like I've been on rants today.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, you're right. I don't disagree with anything you said. I still want them to trade for Justin Fields, though.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Back him up next year. See what happens with Russ next year.
Where's the remove button for David? There it is.
There it is.
So now that David's out of here, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of him for the Justin Fields comment.
All right. Okay, you go back and look at Justin Fields' last 5 games, and you tell me why you don't want to have him as a backup quarterback here.
He's not going to be that's a talk for another conversation.
You're right. He's going to be starting for New England next year. Anyway, to wrap up.
Yeah, it's about that time. So before we go to closing comments from everybody here, guys, remember, if you could help us out a ton by just going to our YouTube page, making sure you click that subscribe button, the notification bell. We put out daily videos for y'all, clips, everything like that. And then don't forget about all of our other content here as part of the Bourbon Broncos and OBS show from the Orange Weekly Broadcast Network. The pregame podcast, we got the live tailgate talk 1 hour before kickoff. We got the halftime hash show. We also got the post-game podcast. We got this. I mean, we got you guys covered with as much content as we possibly can without getting paid for it. So that's hopefully will change someday. But for the time being, you guys check us out on all those platforms. And then for the podcast, obviously iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcasts, we are there. But that being said, guys, let us go through our closing comments. And Jared, as the one with the best hat, the most original hat of the group, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off over to you first.
I'll take most original. So I'm gonna start negative, and then Spotty's got me in this positive mindset right now, so I can't stay there. So the first thing I'm gonna say is I do believe at this point in the Denver Broncos season, we are not going to make the playoffs for a 7th straight year, and we will be above 500. And I think I don't know if it was Jerry or somebody posted earlier. Yeah, Keith. If we finish over 500, it's a win. We're at starting 1-5. Nobody ever expects us to be here. We're kind of in a winning situation regardless of what happens the rest of the season. Yeah. we are not going to be a playoff team. And if we are, somehow sneak into a wild card for some crazy, it's not going to be a long, deep playoff push, right? So I'm sorry. It's just where we are right now, the personnel and everything that we got going for us. However, there's so much hope for the future. This is the first time that we're not talking about firing coaches or trading quarterbacks or blah, 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 all these other things, which is super cool. There's a lot of good things that are coming out of this. And in general, I think give this team one more year. If we could take that first half of the season and just repeat it, like take that first half of the season and say that we're playing the way we are now in the chemistry that we have now, we are absolutely a playoff team. And not even a question. At least three of those 5 losses are absolute wins, no questions asked, right? The Raiders game, the Washington game, there's a couple other games in there that we lost. That was like the Jets game, right? Those are winnable games if we were playing the way we were playing right now. We lost to a Detroit Lions team. I know it's sad and it sucks, and we lost in embarrassing fashion for the most part. But they are a playoff team, and we're not. And that's just where we are right now. And next year, we have a lot to look forward to. We have a lot going for us, and we just have to ride this wave of happiness, regardless of how the last game went. I'm riding the wave of happiness. I'm loving that the Broncos are finally in the contention, being talked about again, and we have a chance to do something good in the next couple of years. And it's not just this never-ending, like, we need to fire everybody and start over.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't make the playoffs, I mean, they're still going to be talking about over the offseason of this is the team to watch out for. This is the team that came back from 1-5. No, there's going to be some serious talk and some serious respect going to this team. So, David, what do you think, good sir?
All right. Well, so Jared kind of stole my premise a little bit, but that's okay. I'd only been thinking about the point I was going to make for like 20 minutes. It's fine. But really, I do think that, I would like to see the Broncos finish 10-7, first of all. I would love to see them win out. And at that point, if they do, I don't think it matters if they make the playoffs. I think at that point, you've seen enough to give you hope that this team going into next season with a similar roster and a same coaching staff, because I think what's going to be key is you're not going to see a big brain drain from the Broncos coaching staff this season. They are going to finish in a position where if you're a fan, you feel really good about their trajectory. But from the outside, there's nobody doing with maybe the exception of Christian Parker, because big shout out, DB's room is always looking fantastic with BJ Locke and Jaquan McMillan coming on this year. It's another year where he's had young players come on and be really, really successful. Anyway, other than that, you're not really looking at a bunch of staff departures, probably. So you're looking at a lot of continuity on the staff. You're looking at a lot of continuity on the roster. And you're in a really good position to go into next year feeling incredibly confident about yourselves if you finish a season that you gave up 70 points with double-digit wins, right?
Yep, I love it. Spotty, what do you think, man?
I went on a lot of rants today, so I'll keep it short in the fact that, like, I 100% agree with you guys. Honestly, if somebody would have told me that the Broncos were going to beat the Chiefs, they were going to beat Buffalo, and they were going to win a primetime game, that's a win for the season. It doesn't really matter if they're 10-7, 9-8, or even 8-9 at that point. This Broncos team has shown that there are some very bright spots to make the team very happy, but all at the same time, I am still very happy. I think we're going to beat the Patriots, and the fact that we can end the season possibly beating both the Chargers and the Raiders just makes it that much better.
Love it. Well, hey guys, look, this is going to be a fun one to watch and get ready for as Patriots come to town. Broncos getting ready. Broncos will be in their snow-capped helmets and their orange rush uniforms, so that'll be looking good with the snow on the field and everything. Probably the snows. I mean, it's Colorado. You never know. It could just be bright and sunny and 50 degrees at the same time. So who knows? But either way, it'll be really fun to see and watch. And there's a lot riding for us on this game. And the pregame podcast will come out here later this week, guys. It's going to be a good one. I'll make sure you guys go check that one down. But look, guys, I don't know about you, but I think it's that time because I got nothing else to say other than to end the show, as we always do, on a very strong Go
Broncos.
Take care, guys.
Cause I know I'm the show. here I go. In the zone, here I go. In the zone, here I go. Yeah, they know I'm a pro.